Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us on episode 19 of Health Talk with Dr. Kell. We are in the middle of a 4-part series called Inflammation and the Autoimmune Response. In week 1, we talked about nutritional triggers for inflammation with Dr. Kell and Ted Hahn, a clinical nutritionist. Ted's favorite quote is, "If it doesn't have fins, feathers, fur, or grow out of the earth, don't eat it." A good place to start is to cut down on hard alcohols and sugars, which cause an inflammatory response in the body. Last week, in part 2, we discussed the physical triggers for inflammation in the body, which are injury and infection. With injury and infection, the body's B cells and T cells jump into action, helping the body to heal. It's best to let the body move through this process naturally. When not injured, mild to moderate exercise can be good for the immune system. It gets the heart pumping and blood flowing throughout the body. Today, in part 3, we will discuss the emotional triggers for inflammation. Have you ever noticed how good you feel when happy, relaxed, and calm? Your energy's high and you get a lot accomplished. Your mental focus is sharp and ideas just line up. The opposite is also true. When you're anxious, angry, or scared, you feel uncertain about things and life seems harder. You feel heavy and your energy may be low. Your mind may be slow and decisions do not come easily. That's because the body responds to emotions. Positive emotions help to boost the immune system. Negative emotions kick in the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, and we're no longer relaxed. When we're in a chronic negative state, our bodies release excess cortisol due to the stress, and too much cortisol can suppress the immune system and contribute to obesity and depression. There are solutions for emotional triggers, such as meditation and yoga, staying engaged and involved in life, and developing trusting relationships. Don't worry, be happy. Come sit on our couch and let's talk about emotions. Welcome, everybody, to Health Talk with Dr. Kell. I'm Nikki Sterner, and today we're going to be discussing the emotional triggers for inflammation. I didn't even know that was a thing, Dr. Kell. But before we get into that, I want to go into the thought of the day, which is, what you lack in talent can be made up with desire, hustle, and giving 110% all the time. And that's a quote by Don Zimmer.
I agree.
Yes, I do too.
I agree because that's me.
Right?
That's me. I have yet to find a single thing I think I'm good at.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why I spend so much time doing things, and trying to learn more and trying to be able to apply that in my life.
Yes,
I'm
me too.
competing against my own mouth today. I can't even talk.
But just keep trying.
Speaking is not a talent either.
Good thing we have a podcast.
But by working on it, by doing this podcast, maybe I'll become a better speaker.
That is true.
And that's partially why I did it.
Reminds me of like the athletes that are like so naturally talented and gifted, and yet
they're born that way, right?
Yeah, they're born that way, and then they don't try, and then you have the person who out hustles them and achieves more on the team.
It's like too simple.
You were
They're
joking?
born that way. They worked for it.
Everybody's born with certain physical abilities that things come easier for them. A child learns to walk at 8, 9 months old, and some children don't learn to walk till they're 2 years old.
All I'm saying is Michael Phelps didn't show up at the pool at 14 and be like, well, I'm going to try for the Olympics, then go for it, right?
Yeah, but Michael Phelps...
Oh, sure,
Michael
yeah.
Phelps...
He's what?
He's both gifted and driven.
Yeah, and that's my point, that he, without that talent, that base talent kept him going in that. When he first jumped in the pool, was he swimming without any lessons? Who knows?
He didn't drown.
But, there's no doubt that the people at the top of their game when it comes to sports did it. With anything, I suppose, did it with a lot of effort behind it. It doesn't, that's not what's implied in your thought of the day, really. The thought of the day is implying, for those of us who had no talent,
right,
you can make up for it. It's not that I just don't want to give up and go sit in the cave all day long because I don't feel like I've ever found the talent that was beneficial, that I was good at right off the bat. Never have. And so that's made me work harder at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And that's what you just said. The guy that with natural talent sometimes sits back and does nothing because it's too easy for him.
Right.
So... Yeah.
The other interesting thing about that is a lot of people are just stuck in their life and they don't ever get to try their talent, right? They're just thinking, this is what I have to do, and they stick at that job they hate or whatever, and they do it for the rest of their life, and they don't realize that there's this talent on the side that they could have tried or pursued that they just never even bothered with.
Yeah, because it was so easy, right? They felt like they had to work hard to achieve something. A lot of people feel like that, like success has to be hard.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's your definition of success too. It can mean many things to many people, but Eric was saying, a lot of people don't have the opportunity, and that may be because they related to their talent abilities, but also may just be related to their lifestyle. Unfortunately, they never get to see, could they be good at playing the guitar, the piano, or running, or whatever it might be, because they never got to play school sports because of their family situation or circumstances. Yeah. Who knows? There could be some real amazing athletes out there that never got to go there because of their life circumstances.
That's true.
And so that's another issue.
All right, next up is the news of the day. You had an article that you wanted to share with us, Dr. Kell?
Yeah, we talked about caffeine a few podcasts ago, and so I wanted to briefly bring up a study that was done related to the heart. We talked about the heart and the effects of caffeine on the heart, but this study goes into a little more detail, and I just wanted to mention it. There were two different test groups put together in this study on blood flow to the heart under the influence of caffeine. And the first group, now these are not large groups of people, but you don't need them to test something like this because they're really just testing a function of the heart under stress with, 200 milligrams of caffeine in their body.
Which
so
is like,
a cup of coffee is about 100 milligrams. So this were the effects of 2 cups of coffee. Monster drinks, a lot of them are 150 milligrams plus, some are 300 milligrams. When I found this article, some other information I found also said that over 400, if you exercise with over 400 milligrams of caffeine in you, you could potentially seriously damage your heart and other systems. This article also gives some insight into exercise. Here's what happened. They took 10 women and 5 men, average age of 58 years old, put them on a stationary bicycle for 50 minutes, had them drink 200 milligrams of caffeine or intake 200 milligrams of caffeine in some form or another, waited after the 50 minutes and then tested the blood flow around the heart and found a decrease of 14% decrease in blood flow around the heart. And these are in older people. Now, interestingly enough, in the other group, average age of 27, they took 18 healthy people and had them do the exact same thing and found a 22% decrease in the blood flow around their heart. So younger people are more affected by the caffeine than older people are, by almost a third. So again, I don't recommend caffeine during or before a workout. If you got to have it, do it afterwards. Don't intake caffeine, anything with caffeine in any significant amount. This study showed 200 milligrams, so a couple of cups of coffee. So you drink a Monster before your workout, you could potentially be doing micro damage to your heart, and over time, repeatedly, could end up actually becoming a problem.
It's not even just Monster drinks too. Like most people, go to the gas station and get a big gulp or something like that.
Yep.
A big gulp, if you're drinking Diet Coke even, which everyone thinks, Diet Coke has got to be good for you right now. Diet Coke will have 150 milligrams of caffeine in it too, because it's technically like 3 cans of Diet Coke.
Right, if you're having the big gulp or the extra large or whatever, you bet.
I think they dismiss soda because they just think, how much caffeine could I actually have? But quite a bit.
Yeah.
I always forget about that because I don't drink it. But
if you took a cup of soda, which is 8 ounces, like a cup of coffee, it's got, 1/4 or so the same amount of caffeine. But 1 cup is a really small amount. A big gulp is what? 8 cups?
Most people aren't drinking 8 ounces of soda. They're drinking like 40.
Right,
So,
right,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so that's where they're getting 150
Yeah.
milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah.
wow. Yeah.
Nasty stuff, but everybody takes it. We live on it.
It's so hard.
The human race can't seem to get up or go to bed without putting some caffeine in themselves, at least in the morning. And the problem with it all, like we discussed before, is the immune system is affected by the caffeine as well. Studies show that when your anxiety kicks in, there's a drop in cytokine levels, and that's the messengers between the white blood cells. So they're not passing the messages to the blood cells. We're moving on to immunity, and that's one of the things to emotional effects on immunity is what we're talking about today. And when we get into that subject in a second, similar things happen there as it does with caffeine, because caffeine affects your emotions.
Yeah. Let's jump into it.
Yeah,
It's
let's
a
get
good
into
time,
it. Yeah.
So just to bring up, any of you guys have a story just to share of an instance where emotions affected someone?
Are emotions like stress? Is that an
Yes, stress is an emotion. Happiness is an emotion. Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you angry?
Happy or sad?
I feel like when you think back, like they talk about people in the military, right, and coming off these massive careers, like submarine captains, for example, and like 6 months after they're released from the military, like they're dead, right? Because that stress level that they maintain for so long in their life, and then all of a sudden it's gone. So you could have the de-stress of it kill you. I think the stress side could
It
also
wasn't the
kill you.
de-stress side that killed them.
It was boredom.
No, well,
That too.
Hanging out
yeah,
with life's
I mean,
just not good enough.
and that was something I was going to bring up at the end, but hey, it's okay. So many movies today, they show you the ending at the beginning and then go through the story.
Yeah.
So
Here's the
we can
punchline,
do
guys.
that
This is
too.
the punchline.
They,
Don't leave.
hobbies, and the one of the things that studies show is it's very important for people if they have a lifestyle change, whether it's due to retirement or some other reason, they need to, as soon as possible, get into doing something else. If nothing else, a hobby. A lot of old guys take up golf, probably going to be one of mine. Don't get to play it a lot now. I don't have the time, but I love the game. But people need to do something to help, and we're going to talk about that when we talk about emotions and immunity.
Sorry, I thought you were leading up to why submarine captains die after 6 months.
I thought I answered that, Eric.
They don't have a hobby? That's
they're
it?
right. Yeah,
Really?
they don't take on other tasks. They do sit around. They get bored. They
Wow.
can't stand the change. So I would assume somebody who had a very intense job like a submarine pilot would probably want his hobby or other thing he started to do, whether it was a part-time job or whatever, would want to be maybe he wants to become a skydiving
So do you need something
trainer or
equally
something.
as stressful, or like
They,
golf's kind of stressful, but like let's say they pick up woodworking, that's not that stressful. Is that enough of a
Well,
hobby?
being calming down their system is important. I mean, they've had too much stress all their life. In fact, they've damaged their body after years of stress is damaged.
Yeah.
That could be another reason why they die soon after stopping. The assumption is, they don't have anything to do, so they got just tired of living and died. And you could die of sadness, I suppose. But I think it's more they have trashed their system chronically for many, many years, and now it doesn't work very well. While they were working, the system ran as best it could, but they wore it down. Now they're in a state as an older person where their system doesn't work very well and they're more susceptible to disease.
Well, this makes me think of like people being busy. And why do we stay busy? Because we don't, a lot of times, I'm not saying we're always busy, because we don't want to face up to our emotions or deal with, emotional trauma, that sort of thing from childhood. So I think the best hobby would probably be therapy when you retire, right? Go start seeing a therapist and deal with the calmness, the quiet, because that's when all of these thoughts start creeping in and you have to deal with emotional stuff because...
I want to talk about the science for a second, Nikki, but you're exactly right. As I try to talk about the science in the beginning and then get into the stories and do all that stuff. So let's come around to that as we're born.
Sorry.
Now, inside the
Beginning.
body, what happens? Yes. What happens in the body? Okay, so look for a minute about your emotional system. So you can micro-categorize these areas, but consider happiness or the feeling of being happy. And that would probably include laughing and smiling and listening to music, doing some activity that you really enjoy. Those would be in the areas of feeling good, right? Okay, then you have all the negative emotions where you're in fear or you feel like, of course, fear and danger. Similar things typically. Other things that might activate that. We've talked in different episodes about the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. And the parasympathetic system is when you're calm and relaxed, and they kind of overlap. Let's say in a sports activity you're really enjoying, you may have some activation of both systems along the way during the process, and that's really what's happening with them both anyway. There's a homeostasis or balance between the two, but sometimes one really overtakes the other and subdues the other. For instance, in the parasympathetic system is digestion. Well, if you're in a real fearful state, like running from someone or afraid because of the circumstances, you're in the midst of an earthquake or whatever, your sympathetic nervous system is going to be in overdrive and you're not digesting anything at that moment. Those are kind of the differences. Negative thoughts and feelings, negative circumstances often kick in the sympathetic nervous system. And when the sympathetic nervous system takes over, you're no longer relaxed. You're on edge. Okay, because now you're in fire mode. And you can be that even in subtle ways. Someone who is in a state of complaining can set that system off to where now the anxiety builds. Talking about, there's a big debate today about, do we talk about our emotions? There was time when, you got to go talk out those emotions and tell all those stories that ill affected you in life. Share those with a given person, and then once you've shared it, you'll feel better. Then there's another school of thought is, the more you share it, the more depressed you become because you keep taking yourself back to that negative experience. And so I'm more lean towards the latter. Though I think having that initial let go, talking about your problem one time is good. But rehashing it is not. It's kind of like going to a funeral. The whole purpose of a funeral is not obviously for the dead, it's for the living. And so they go through an experience of release or saying goodbye to the person and letting go of what once was part of their lives and now longer will be. Same kind of principle. So you've got anger too. In anger, I would put and hatred, real hatred. Anger probably would fall into, I always like remember the old Star Wars movie? Yoda was, of course, my favorite character.
Old wrinkly guy.
And the old little wrinkly guy, but the wisest, strongest guy out there because of his mind and the way he was. But he said, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate. Or some of that wisdom he dispelled, or whoever created that for the movie. And it applies, right? Totally applies. And so at the hatred, they say, they've done studies, basically research going back and finding people or looking at people's lives, or done studies over 30, 40 years' time with different groups of people and studied their connections with their emotions and their lifestyle and their health. And so share a story, Nikki.
Okay.
Share something where you could maybe tie it into what we've talked about. Let me just start by saying positive emotion improves your immune system. Negative emotion compromises your immune system.
So I got a story for that, then, while you bring that up. So my wife's grandma, she's 80, 82, like something like that. She's been like depressed and angry and bitter her whole life. I know she's never going to listen to this podcast. I can see all about it. She's like it's just this short, grumpy old lady. And probably 5 years ago, she started having dementia and just started having all these health issues. She's just complained about something her whole entire life. Since the day she was 19 and got married, she's complained about something. And everybody in her family knows this about her. And it's just like, that's grandma, but she's always been unhealthy. She's always had medical issues and something going on. And it's just interesting that you bring that up. It makes a lot of sense. Like, she's just had this negative life.
And the chemistry behind it totally makes sense because the whole process, the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland that are up in your brain and your adrenal glands all are connected to your emotional system and your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And they all work interactively and depending on your situation, create chemicals which go throughout your body and do different things to your organs, your muscles, your nerves, to your brain itself. So that whole process creates the inflammatory response or does not create the inflammatory response, which then begins the whole cycle of creating more white blood cells. Those white blood cells are converted after they leave the bone marrow. The T cells go to the thymus and converted there. The B cells are, I don't need to go into the science. The point is, cytokines are a chemical that causes it's the messenger in the blood that takes the messages from different white blood cells to cause their change based on a given benefit, whether it's an injury or a microbe that's entered your body and infected you. It will send different messages based on what to do for those given problems and how to fix them. So amazing. So amazing. It's like this whole process is just taking place without thought whatsoever. The cells just automatically know what to do. Problem is when you have negative thoughts, negative emotions, the cytokine numbers have been shown in research to drop. So the message, the white blood cells may be getting made, but the messages that carry them to do the things they're supposed to do are not getting passed on, or they're getting the wrong messages passed on. And the same thing happens while you're taking in those amounts of caffeine. And that's why I brought that up previously. It gets even worse when you're in a state of... They said that momentary anger, which is considered somewhat normal, is okay. They didn't notice big changes there, but deep hatred or loathing, when someone really can't stand somebody and let's say they feel that person really did them wrong, and whenever they're in their presence, all they can do is think about how much they dislike them and how they might want to hurt them, or that they could feel as much pain as they feel because of what that person did. Many people have those people in their lives. And sometimes they're family members. And they have to be around them at events and things like that.
Almost a trigger.
Yes, but interestingly enough, when you're in a state of positive mode, the reverse happens. The body functions more normally, can react to infections more quickly and intelligently, and repair itself quicker and more efficiently in a positive state. So after a workout, you see these athletes, I think people like Schwarzenegger and the major famous people in bodybuilding. I'll bet you'd never find a negative one in them. I mean, I'm sure they moan and groan and complain now and then, but after their workout, what do you think they're doing? They're like, and they're going and pounding down their supplements and protein drinks, and they're like, oh, that hurts so good, Oh man, I can't hardly walk, but I know I really worked out that time. That's the way they are, and so that goes along right with they're helping their body heal faster by doing that.
We talked about this near the beginning of this podcast series about celebrating after you've had something, right? Like clapping and making you happy, and you're kind of triggering that endorphin, I guess you could say, right?
Yes. Yes. And so you want to be, you don't want to go sit in your car after work and think about all the crappy things that have happened to you in your life. Or you just saw somebody at the gym that you can't stand and you hope you don't run into them next time. You need to have a good attitude when you're working out, like this feels so good even when it doesn't, and keep that going for at least an hour or two after the workout, going throughout your life. It's not an easy thing to do because there's always stuff hitting us in the face every day. But there was a quote that I wanted to share. Anybody have a story first?
I was just going to say, what else might help while they're in there is like when they're actually looking in the mirror, seeing results. I think that's a positive reinforcement, don't you? I know when I used to lift a lot, I would notice, the little bit of muscle tone and be empowered. Like, this is working. I like this. This makes me feel good.
Yes.
So I think
Yeah,
sounds like that helps.
Just the exercise itself, and it can vary of course, from day to day, but typically it gives you a high, and most people, once they get into a routine of working out, they notice it. And they notice their motivation increasing and their general happiness and well-being improving.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty common knowledge today that if you're a depressed person, get on exercise as soon as you can, even the minimum amount of exercise. Just get out of the house and take a walk. And taking walks could lead into runs and then going to the gym and making friends and getting, we're social beings. Most depressed people tend to be isolated people. Mm-hmm. Not always. I mean, there's some very depressed people. Robin Williams, you'd have thought socially he'd have had the social connections that more than anyone, and of course had the wealth beyond most. But anyway, it can happen to even people who have the social circle, but the social circle is very important, and studies show that having at least a good friend that you can share things with safely, who won't share those things with others, can be just okay. And now I'm going to have the psychotherapist and psychologist mad at me. If you can't afford the psychologist, get a buddy you can share with and who you can share safely with. Test them. Share something with them. Share something with them that doesn't matter, and see if they share that with other people. If they don't, then maybe you can move on and
get a dog, right?
But everybody should. I think that's to me, when I look at the benefit of psychologists and psychiatrists, is one of the biggest benefits is they promise they won't share anything you say with anybody else, and so you can just spill your guts. And like I say, spilling your guts once is a good thing. Spilling your guts repeatedly and rehashing the event over and over and over again is the worst thing you can possibly do. You got to let it go. Once you've shared it, let it go. It's gone. You can give it to that other friend or person or your doctor and treat it as if it's gone. It's no longer part of your life. And if other people bring it up, you just ignore it and move on, because there's nothing else you can do to change it. You said your sorries, your apologies. You've done all the things to repair whatever damage could have been done on your side. Move on with it afterwards. Be happy about it and let it go and not be part of your life anymore.
Well, there's also like reprogramming, like when we do emotional release therapy with Ingrid.
Absolutely.
Like, here's what you currently have.
And we're going to have Dr. Ingrid come in the future and talk about that. There are ways to remove those emotional triggers, and some people can get rid of it on their own. Men over women. That's one of our few things we have over women is we seem to get over things faster.
I don't know about that.
Is that right?
Actually, men as a whole have been shown in studies to let things go more easily than women. Of course, not always the case.
Maybe men to men, but I don't know about men to women.
Yeah.
The women as a whole, just their personalities as to men, and now I'm a racist bigot. All the names, because I'm differentiating between men and women. Anyway, from what I've read, this is what
you're saying. The majority says this.
If you take men as a whole and women as a whole,
sure.
Men tend to let things go sooner than women. Okay, it's not about a competition between men and women or something. I don't know. That fit? I don't know, because that was the feedback I was getting from you guys. Now, wait a minute. That may not be true.
Hold on. Let me just rehash this a little bit. It's not a competition between, who can release it faster or better, men and women. We're all one. But I wanted to rehash, what are the three groupings of emotions that you were talking about? Happiness was one. Fear
was
2.
And hatred.
And hatred. Okay. So that was...
Yeah, those are the different levels that affect your immune system. Just having negative thoughts throughout the day can decrease your immunity by 10 to 15%.
It makes sense, though, because you do feel down.
And two things, when we talk about immunity, we're really talking about immunity, the way it works in the body, and immunity, a lot of people don't understand. The immune response occurs when you get an injury, and it occurs when you get an infection, actually, infection hasn't necessarily occurred when the microbe enters your body. So when a foreign body enters your body, or you get injured, the immune response kicks in. Part of that initial immune response is inflammation. And so sending fluid to the area, more blood, so that it with those white blood cells, so that it can begin healing, can begin killing off the infected or damaged cells and removing them from the area, and then helping the body to re-go healthy cells.
Okay, can I interrupt? Because I feel like I want to talk about this. I'm confused on how stress ties into the emotions, because I feel like stress is like the worst part of, getting sick. Like, it's just like the last thing.
I would categorize, as I said before, those three categories can cover several things. Stress would lie in the negative feelings category.
Yeah, because you could have stress with hatred, and you could have stress with anger. You're probably not going to have stress with happiness.
and what are we talking about what's your definition of stress, Nikki?
I feel like it's like when you push your body to the limit, to the point where you're completely exhausted, and then your body just shuts down. Like, everybody does this, whether it's work or I think of when I was helping my sister plan her wedding, and I had just had Jake. He was 3 months old, and we had to travel to Montana from Idaho, where we lived at the time, and it was extremely stressful, but yet my body held out all the way up until the wedding was over, and I literally took off the bridesmaid's dress, and then I was in bed for 2 days with the flu and could not even move, literally out of bed.
What had happened and why, then that's an absolute definition of stressed out. So what happened in that case? That event led to the anxiety, the emotion of anxiety.
Okay, so that's anxiety.
Which anxiety would fall in the negative emotion category. And it falls into fear, right?
Yeah, fear of things going wrong.
Fear.
Yeah.
So you're feeling fear, which triggers chemical creation in the hypothalamus, the pituitary, which is sent to the adrenal glands, which kicks off the overabundance of adrenaline, which kicks in the sympathetic nervous system, so shuts down digestion, shuts down those feelings of calmness, and it creates a cycle that then slows down the function of the cytokines. So those messages getting back and forth to the white blood cells, the white blood cells are being made, but they may not be getting the correct messages or getting any messages, so that they change into to help with the benefit of healing from an injury or from fighting a microbe that enters your body. So therefore, all that cycle and so then you get that overabundance of adrenaline, the constant running of the sympathetic nervous system lowers your ability to fight an invader when it enters your body. So that's why you got sick and why you felt out of it and totally burned it. It was the infection that caused that feeling of, I'm done and lay back, can't do anything but sleep. It wasn't the stress itself, but the stress and the anxiety that compromised your immune system made you now susceptible to the microbe that normally your body would have fought off. Mm-hmm. Now, had you used my therapy and done smiling and clapping and
right.
When you did something positive and I'll bet you didn't even pinch yourself when you felt those negative feelings.
I didn't. You're right.
You could have changed that. You could have recognized that, hey, I'm going into a stressful situation. How can I counter it? I know I'm going to feel a lot of anxiety. I'm going to feel a lot of fear of everything going wrong, or things messing up, or me saying the wrong thing, or doing the wrong thing in this group of people. I mean, we're always constantly in fear. We want acceptance from the rest of the world, everybody. A lot of people get to a point to where I don't get the acceptance I want, so now I'm going to do everything the opposite. Because people want, I can't remember now who said it, but someone said that you want to be the center of the room, whether positively or negatively.
I don't think you want to be the center of the room if you're negative.
No, my point being is that there are many people today, when they can't get the positive response from others, they'll take the negative just to get some kind of attention. Children acting up, employees acting up, husband and wife having arguments. Often it can be an attention thing. Oh, I don't get any attention in a positive way, so I'm going to do a bunch of negative stuff, and I know my husband will pay attention to me then. It's not going to be in a positive way, but at least they're showing some emotion towards me. It typically isn't a conscious thing that people do, but the result is the attention feels in some subtle way getting attention, and that way is of help to people because they're getting some attention. And they don't want the negative attention. You'd rather have the positive. But if they've done everything they could to get the positive, then people tend to lean towards, I'm just going to go do the negative because at least I get some response.
Rather than feel neglected or
Right.
feel nothing. It's
Yes.
better to feel something.
Yes.
Is that what you do, Eric? Is that what you do to your wife?
Until I get what I want. Yeah. It works.
Oh yeah.
No, I have 3 girls right now, and the youngest one's about to turn 4, and she's that way. She just wants attention, and she'll just, like yesterday was rough. She knows how to press my wife's buttons and just finds things, 'cause right now we're doing homeschool still, and the other 2 are, in kindergarten and 4th grade, and most of the attention's spent on them all day, and so the 4-year-old, almost 4-year-old, she'll do whatever she can. Okay, Mom, pay attention to me. I'm gonna sneak candy from the house, or I'm gonna, get into your stuff, or whatever it is, just to have that attention.
Make a mess.
Yep. Make a mess, scream, shout. Yep.
That's exciting. Isn't that fun?
Yeah, it is. So much fun.
Well, and what's happening in that situation? Can we analyze
Yeah,
that?
let's
yeah.
analyze it. This will be fun.
Eric,
Yep.
So let's look at it. So you become stressed because of the way she's acting.
No, I'm beyond feeling. It's all my wife. But yeah, anyway, go ahead.
Okay,
You're just there for support.
and that's good, right?
Yeah.
You've got beyond it.
Yeah.
And so you're not letting it compromise your
Yeah.
immunity. But Megan, don't get upset with this if you listen to this podcast. But you feel like maybe Megan still stresses about it.
Yeah.
So this is good in the sense of people need to see in these moments, recognize the moments when it's happening, and you can shut it off. But being this way in some prolonged manner definitely compromises your immune system and enables you to get sick. So getting angry, feeling anxiety. But your daughter, for instance, maybe she acts up because she doesn't get her way, right?
Yep.
Because they want something. They might have asked for it nicely, and Mom said no.
Mom was busy.
And then they come back with it's kind of like, I can think of some husband and wife relationships, even of my own, where with my own children, what happens? Okay, it goes, there's 2 sides to the story. Think about it. As a parent, my child says, could I have that? And I lovingly and knowing that it would not be good for them at the moment, say, no, you can't have that right now. And the child goes, but I asked, thinking in their mind, but I asked nicely.
Yeah.
And you told me when I asked for things nicely,
I get them.
that's better. But it didn't give me what I wanted. And, sometimes the child walks away and the parent doesn't hear any more about it. But as the child gets older and hits puberty, and even before, they learn more, right? Okay, at what point, what do I have to do to get my parent to give me what I'm asking for? And as an adult, what do I have to do to get my child to listen to me and get what I want?
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's the same. You're both fighting the same battle, right?
Battle of
it's
wills.
just who wins.
Yeah.
And sometimes the child is willing to go way above and beyond what might be considered normal in society. And so is a parent at times. And that's when you've just totally trashed your immune system on both sides.
Both sides mean the kid and the parent?
Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas if people can learn to go, the parent can go, really what should be the parent's words when the child acts up? I'm not the child psychologist, so I'm not claiming to be, but I can, we have observed many things, and I've raised 5, I have 7 children.
You're only claiming 5?
5 sons, 2 daughters.
Okay.
And though I didn't fully raise my daughters, but having dealt with 5 sons and dealt with this cycle over and over and over again, I found what works and what keeps me from blowing my stack, which I did many times when my first 2 children. I think they still blame me for everything goes wrong in their lives. Just kidding, guys. But
Just kidding, really not.
Yeah. But it's okay. I'll take the blame. I probably am at fault.
The first have the hardest because we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, right.
It's
They're
true.
doing, the manuals. We're not finding the manual soon enough. I don't know.
You didn't get one?
And we hear all kinds of information. Went from there was a time when physical punishment in the form of a spanking was a thing, spare the rod, spoil the child attitude, and then it moved on to timeouts, and now, and what I found most effective is is just to change the child's perspective. Redirect. And we need the same thing. It works the same way for us as adults. We just need to redirect. And so if we can redirect in our mind onto something else, the parent who says, I said no, that's the end of it. Here's the consequence if you continue. The child goes, what?
Here's a shiny object to distract you.
Yeah.
Here's a fun toy.
and then, by the way, we're going to go do something else right now. At the end, and hopefully that takes the child or the adult out of whatever negative feelings they're having at that moment. And because that's the goal. The quicker you can get yourself out of a negative thought and feeling, the more your immune system is functioning normally, the better you can fight off any microbe that might come to harm you. And if you go injure yourself working out or in some physical activity, your body's going to heal a lot faster. So the last thing you want to do if you get injured or hurt is go be negative about it. And that's a hard thing to do because it's a common thing. That's why it's important for people after they're injured to not be alone. You'll heal faster if you have a support group that helps you after an injury because your immune system is working at optimum because you're feeling the love. So it's important for us to share the love with people we know are hurt or sick or not feeling well because that boosts their immunity. To the person who is left alone, it can take them down to death. That's why I don't want to get into COVID and all the older elderly that died and their families weren't allowed to come see them during that time and can't blame our government on those deaths. But the research shows that those people needed interaction with others, and that would have boosted their immune system. And the funny thing is doctors, medical doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, all healthcare professionals get this. They understand this. So why didn't they do it? I don't know. I guess just for fear that those people become sick too. But there could have been ways around it. Put a piece of glass between whatever it might have been. I mean, yeah. Anyway, we know that now. Hopefully as time goes on, we'll realize that is just absolutely, I'll think of all the suicides that occurred during COVID.
Oh, yeah. Sad.
And that's because of the isolation.
So to prevent this downward spiral that potentially happens after an accident or some negative thing in our life, obviously we need to find a happy replacement or something that's going to boost our morale and get us back to par, right?
Yes.
That's kind of the goal there. So finding something in your life that's happy.
Yes.
And
practical suggestions. We have some, Eric.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I was going to say, after a car accident, go get some ice cream, right? And make it all better.
That makes me happy. I'm in.
Well, that was perfect.
All right.
That was perfect.
Did you see how happy I got when you talked about that?
just thinking about it. We talked about that in the past.
I'm in.
Does anybody want to sponsor our show with an ice cream company here? Just come on over.
Let's look, since we're on that side of practical things we can do to make changes, what makes us feel better, Nikki? What makes you feel better? Doing what makes you feel better?
Chocolate. Oh, I mean,
Chocolate, yeah.
Okay,
ice cream cookies.
Let's for a moment.
Talking about like
Okay, let's for a
something
moment.
healthy.
doing burpees, right?
Yeah. Going for a walk, meditation, getting more sleep.
Yes, I don't want to get people focused on eating food when they're not feeling right, because that will
Comfort food,
just
We're already doing that.
will give you one more
doesn't
thing
work.
to feel depressed about if your being overweight bothers you. If you're someone who is happy with themselves and you weigh 350 pounds and you care less if anybody else, what other people think, and that you think you're happy in that moment, in that place, and you don't want to do anything about it, not because you're lazy, but because you're happy with yourself, then you're in a perfect place. And I wouldn't change a thing because you're healthier, happier than you are thin and miserable. So, so I suggest to people if they're going to lose weight, figure out the reasons they want to lose weight and the purpose of it before they go do it, because the process of losing weight also compromises or lowers your immunity. Living on carbs and protein, living on fat and protein with very few carbs affects and lowers your immunity. And a prolonged diet like that, like the keto diets and Atkins diets, that actually can lower your immunity if you do it intently for a long period of time to the point of making you more easily get sick.
So I had a quick comment here, though. So I was editing our podcast 17 the other day when we were talking about TED, right? And you brought up the fact that people have emotional ties to the food that they eat, and it brings them this happiness. And you were talking about your grandma's food, and now it brought you all this happiness. That's the point, right? When people are sad, they have that comfort food, right? They go out and eat all this food that may not be great for them, but it brings them happiness because that somehow emotionally they're tied to that.
It's a temporary happiness.
Yeah, but they're tied to that, and so they're thinking, oh, I'm eating my fried chicken or mashed potatoes or whatever it is, and like it's bringing me this happiness because it brought me back to a moment where I was happy doing something different in my life, and that's probably why they call it comfort food.
Yeah, but think of the cycle that most people go through with that, which the end result of comfort food is more damage. Unfortunately for most people, unless they control it. They only eat the comfort food. They don't eat the comfort food at every sign of stress.
Right.
Or every sign of anxiety. They first look to the thinking process of changing their perception in that moment to a state of happiness over a state of sadness. They don't go to the food first. Food should be for the severe things that happen. If you use food as a minor lift because you can't handle any bit of anxiety at all, you've got to learn some techniques to overcome that. Hypnosis can help with that. There's other emotional techniques and practice mental
meditation
exercises you can do that can help with that so that you're not constantly reaching for the food. But look at the cycle for the food. You go, oh, I'm feeling anxiety. There's a donut.
That feels good.
I love donuts. And you go and you grab the donut, you're eating the donut. Oh, it feels so good. Oh, that tastes so good. And you're feeling better. And your immune system's happy for about the length of the time you eat the donut.
Yes.
And so maybe you eat the donut, suck it down, and it's gone in 5 seconds. And you never chewed. You just kind of slobbered on it and
We'll take a donut
swallowed
sponsor,
it.
by the way, too.
or maybe you're the person who understands that chewing your food is part of digestion, and so you chew on it for a while to mix it with your saliva, and so it starts to digest in your mouth before it goes down. And I know that probably grosses some people out.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very good.
But that's the reality. So you do that, and then what happens?
And then you feel like, oh.
Why did I eat that?
Oh.
Why did I give in to that?
Let's go get another one.
Yeah.
And then if
Well,
there's
might as well eat a cookie now.
if there's a box of 20 of them
Maybe the pink
sitting
one
there,
tastes better.
the box of 20 of them sitting there, and you're that kind of person who's really, in that moment, you might eat the whole box.
Yeah.
No, I know.
The whole bag of potato
Since
chips.
you had sugar, now you
That's
have
what
to
I
have
did
salt.
as a kid.
You got to switch from sugar to
Salted
salt.
caramel donuts, yes.
As a kid, when I was, in that those junior
phases.
high years, I was dealing with a lot of anxiety. Parents had gotten divorced. I was going to a new school. Wasn't feeling like I was.
Yeah,
What?
those chubby
chubby.
phases.
No, I wasn't chubby at
I've
first.
had those.
But I went to the new school in the 7th grade and actually switched junior highs twice. And anyway, went through a lot of family turmoil, a lot of making friends issues and all those kinds of things. And so there were days where I would sit down after school in front of the television. Am I sharing this with the world? Sit down in front of the television. I'd turn on things like, we had a black and white TV then. That's how old I am. And there were no remotes. I had to get up and turn the channel with my hands. But it gave me a little extra exercise than kids get today.
Right.
And it was we had like 6 channels. And the news was on half of them. And the other ones, I would watch a series of Gilligan's Island, I Dream of Jeannie, what else? Speed Racer, cartoons. TV was terrible back then.
Yeah.
It really was, but it was better than nothing. But I'd sit there and chug a couple of big glasses of milk and eat a whole bag of potato chips. In one sitting. It's no wonder, it just put on the pounds. And it was all anxiety eating.
It adds up.
As a teenager. And that's going on with our teenagers today, They're under constant stress. That's why people in sports, the exercise we talked about, how it benefits our over our health and the way our immune system works. But if it becomes too intense and too emotionally attached, like in competitive sports, then it has the opposite effect. It can really, those kinds of people can get sick easier and are more prone. They go to the huge events with all kinds of people exposed to all kinds of stuff, and they just ran a race and they got 3rd place. The first place runner, he runs out of there, he's jazzed, yelling, I got won. His immune system, the other 9 runners, down, negative, I lost. And so, anyway, that's what happens.
What about, I'm thinking today, so kids that are online playing games, and that is kind of stressful too, right? Because it's you're constantly having to fight and kill and do. And same thing with adults that are binge watching TV shows like myself. I'm into Scandal right now, and there's a lot of on edge type stuff, and I feel like it's stressful. It's it makes me happy, and I'm kind of addicted to it. And I think kids are probably the same way with games. It makes them happy. It makes them feel attached to something. but it's stressful too. So it's like,
Well, what happens there, and that typically is a weight gain, cycle to weight gain as well, because when the sympathetic nervous system is constantly running, you're producing more cortisol, and I see a lot of kids while they're playing games, they're stopping. They got a remote in their hand, which I didn't have as a kid. So if I'd had the remote, it would have slowed me down.
Yeah, burning calories.
It would have slowed my intake down a little bit. But most kids have snacks sitting there at the table. I know my son does, and so they're in a cortisol high, and they're putting in the carbs and fat. There's very little protein in most junk food, and so that combination is high in calories, and they're sitting there with no activity other than their brain. Now, believe it or not, you're burning calories playing those games. Your brain is working hard, and so you are burning calories, but not the kind of calories you would be if you were exercising the muscles. So you are expending energy, but it doesn't offset the energy. So a lot of kids who sit around and do that, they gain weight, and then and that compromises that whole process, lowers the immune system as well. Their excessive amount of cortisol not only causes the storage of fat, but it also, along with other chemicals, cause a depression of the immune system, cause a depression of the mind too, because constant anxiety can get a person in a cycle of constant negative thought. It's hard that perpetuates itself. So you got to break up that cycle, and so here's some practical suggestions. It is important to recognize and acknowledge your feelings. Participation in a support group, finding a friend, being able to share the fact and understand the fact that you're acknowledging that you're dealing with negative feelings is important to us.
right, because if you don't,
It's kind of like the
they don't go
alcoholic
away.
who admits
right?
he's an alcoholic. You got to do that. You've got to acknowledge it before you can do anything about it or change it.
Right.
And so really think about yourself. Are you a negative thinker? I know people that aren't negative thinkers, and they could say to themselves, no. Do they think about negative things now and then? A truly positive thinker is not going to be a person who never thinks about negative things. A positive person is someone who drives away those negative feelings as soon as they recognize they're there. And they drive them away by thinking of positive experiences, by having positive communications with others, by listening to good music that lifts them up. Not music. Unfortunately, rock and roll kicks in our sympathetic nervous system, most of it, especially the heavy metal stuff.
Yeah.
So, laughing, sharing good stories, positive stories, not watching good movies, comedies, and movies with an uplifting ending. It's okay to have a little. I like a movie that has you on the edge a little bit, or at least you're in a place where you're not sure what's going to happen, and then the end result is good. So, documentaries. I have a lot of negative documentaries, hearing about the dolphins and how the dolphin-safe tuna really isn't what it says it is.
It's not really tuna.
It's really tuna. It's just not dolphin-safe. There's enough evidence, and that documentary that came out recently talking about how they videotaped all these companies who supposedly were catch and releasing the tunas, or catch and release the dolphins while they were catching the tunas, were not doing it, and they were just as many dolphins were dying as anybody else. And it was just a matter of paying the money to the company who let you use their stamp of dolphin safe tuna,
you're kidding.
that was getting the dolphin safe tuna
that
emblem
right?
on the can.
Is that right?
Yeah. That's what the documentary shows. And so a lot of stuff is going on in our society that way. It's always goes back to the money. Anyway, so meditation. It's a big one. Taking yoga. Love yoga for bringing yourself back into centered, positive thought. Think of some other things, guys. What can you think of?
I was just going to comment on meditation. That's something I've been trying to do this year a lot more. Just take 10 minutes out of my day. There's an app I use called Headspace, and it's a guided meditation that walks you through, sit down in your chair and do this and this and this, and he'll guide you through and ask you questions to think about and stuff. So it's not just for 10 minutes straight.
Yeah.
But man, it is amazing the difference that I've noticed in my body and in just my life after doing that. Even if it's just once a week, I try to do it every day.
What do you meditate on?
Yeah, just whatever it tells you. Like
whatever.
It'll guide you
Guided.
through specific things to
Let's
think
focus
about.
on this
Yeah.
positive thing today.
Yeah,
that
and it'll have
positive
kind of a theme or whatever. But man, it's just amazing what that changes. And I usually try to do it in the middle of my day, like right before lunch or something like that. But yeah.
Well, that would be the place to go for people who are having a severe situation, or to get into a routine of doing it. Obviously, could set your time for the day. A lot of religious people pray, and prayer should be a positive thing for people too. If it's a negative thing to you, you need to reassess your prayers and what you're really after. Prayer should be a release, letting go of, that whole idea of repentance and renewing your relationship with God should be all that there too, so that in the result that prayer is a form of meditation or a form of connection with deity, and that should always be a positive thing. Yeah, you want to beat yourself up in the beginning about all the dumb things you do, go ahead, but in the end it should be thanks for forgiving me, and going away with a feeling of goodness, not a feeling of condemnation, because constant condemnation, the shaming of others really hurts your immune system. And chronic versus, we didn't really go that much into it, but it all applies the same way. But just to briefly say, acute or an immediate event that occurs that causes anxiety or fear to occur, or hatred to take you down that dark path. A quick one that you can resolve quickly typically doesn't affect your immune system seriously. And briefly, abruptly do it and maybe last, for the duration of the event and as long until you change it, which could be a few hours. But what about the chronic person? What about someone who's a caregiver to a family member? That could be a positive or a negative thing. But just the anxiety and the stress dealing with them we often hear stories about spouses who take care of someone who is ill. They wear themselves down and often end up dying
before.
in a similar time frame as the other person, and that's often because they've worn themselves out. Their immune system is compromised along with the person they're helping, and they succumb to something.
Yeah, I like the Hay House app. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that one, but it has audiobooks, it has meditations, it has interviews, it has all sorts of uplifting, inspirational, self-help type things.
And that's great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. Unfortunately, the older crowd, which tend to sit into that stressful category of chronic stress, are unfamiliar with all the great stuff on the internet. Mm-hmm. My mother and my wife's parents can't cope with smartphone. Mm-hmm. None of them have smartphones, so they can't use the app. And so with the elderly and with older people that need a lot of this stuff, new ways need to be created to help them. A lot of them, like my mother, she sits around and watches TV all day.
News.
And most of that TV news is negative. And she loves to,
mine too.
My mother is an enigma. I'm sorry she doesn't completely follow everything we've been talking about today. She will never listen to this podcast, so I'm not concerned about it.
She won't find it.
And she's still alive, so I'm not speaking ill of the dead. But she's reached a point in her life to where, and a lot of older people get this way, and it's part of the degradation of their brain. But all the negative things in their minds happen. As dementia, Alzheimer's, even old timers disease, like myself has as an old timer. It's beginning stages of that. All that stuff is all negative, right? But at 88, she just she can't hardly have a conversation that doesn't have something negative in it. She loves to watch the news and movies that create anxiety. She likes to watch the stories about people who their body disappeared and now they think they found it, mm-hmm. and the story behind the whole thing, and so she likes that adrenaline rush, and
but it does. It creates stress.
It does. And so, amazingly enough, I don't know. An oncologist could probably explain it better than I could, but I find it interesting. She has a form of leukemia where her white blood cell count is extra high over a normal person, and I'm not so sure that's not helping her immunity, because white blood cell counts occur when your immune system kicks on. So it may be helping support her immunity. I don't know, but it kind of would make sense. Anyway, any other stories you'd like to share? Other things?
There any other suggestions?
Let's see. Stay engaged and involved in life is an important thing. So, staying engaged, having things to do. Participating in activities. If you're an older person and you live in an apartment complex or some kind of center, get out and do activities. I know COVID has put a big hamper on that. Huge. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people who passed away just because of the isolation.
Isolation, no interaction.
I think unfortunately, I feel like our government made a big mistake when they shut everything down the way they did and isolated people the way they did. I think that's caused more damage than the virus itself. We still could have stayed safe, figured out ways to stay safe, but still had physical interaction. And they've tried to improve on it over time, and it's getting better. So we've already kind of talked about the other things: relationships, developing trusting relationships where you can share with. Not constantly hashing over your past, and kicking yourself in the head for it. Forgive yourself. Big process. Forgive yourself for all the stupid things you've done. Recognize you'll continue to do stupid things in life, and that you'll take them one at a time. And with that attitude, maybe you won't do so many stupid things in life because you'll have more confidence and be more willing to recognize and overcome the obstacles that are inhibiting your progress.
Yeah, by staying in that positive mind space.
Yeah.
Keeping yourself engaged in things with people.
Yeah, and the real, it all comes down to giving up. Don't give up. Don't give up. There's a purpose. Keep having a purpose, Feel so bad for people that do follow through with suicide. I think everyone from time to time, or at least the majority of human beings, at one time in their life, things have felt like they'd gotten so bad that they didn't want to be here anymore. And really it wasn't, I don't think anybody ever really wants to eliminate their existence. I think we all just want to change our circumstances. And if you can change the circumstance, and that's the whole idea of what we're talking about, change the circumstances, and then you won't want to leave.
Right.
Now, some people get to the point where it doesn't matter what I do, my circumstances are never going to change, and it's never going to get better, and that's when they go, it's never going to get better.
When they lose hope.
Yeah, they totally lose hope.
No,
the fact is, they can lose, or there is always hope.
They can lose hope.
You can't lose hope.
You can't lose hope. Yeah.
There's always hope.
There has to be.
And you can't let yourself lose hope completely.
When you get there, you have to change.
There is always a place you can go. There's always a place you can go find a friend. There's always a place.
Call Dr. Kell. He's here for you. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Lines are open.
We're taking calls.
You guys ready? Just kidding.
Hi, I'm calling in from Minneapolis.
But who knows? Maybe someday. We're not psychologists or psychiatrists. I hope we're not coming across as we are. We're just trying to show to people and get you to understand the connection between the way you feel and your health. And the way you feel and your health is important, very important. And feeling sad, feeling bad constantly and chronically will make you open to not only the microbes in the environment that can then take you out, but it also reduces your ability to heal from injuries. And it also causes internal dysfunction of your systems. Your brain, your organs don't work optimally. Therefore, one of the reasons I believe that maybe you don't succeed and you keep through that cycle of failure and to the point to where you finally give up is because you're thinking too negatively all the time, and it doesn't get you past those difficulties. You quit. You give up because you think it's just going to perpetuate instead of believing that if I just keep going, you don't have to be the winner of the race. You just need to finish the race, And if you don't finish the race today, you can go finish it tomorrow because the race is always there. That's why life is called a race. It's not a race against everyone else. It's a race against yourself. So that's my perception and my perspective.
So the emotions can either tear you down and cause inflammation throughout your body, or they can lift you up and bring you to the place where you're happy and fulfilled and engaged with other people in life. And that's kind of what you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
The lesson of the story.
Yep, you got it, Nikki.
Stay involved.
Yes.
Stay positive. If you feel hopeless, change your circumstance. Eric, is there anything that you wanted to add?
I was just thinking about eating some donuts. I mean, that'll change everything.
Did you guys want me to bring donuts to the podcast from now on?
Can we get a dozen donuts next time?
That's what it takes to keep you here and happy. Even though I know it momentarily will trash you after you're done with the donut, and you'll just feel guilt and run down afterwards. So that's what I'd like to end on. Don't eat the
donut is what you're saying?
Don't anxiety eat, stress eat. It's the worst thing you can do because it's just a cycle of negativity, it's a temporary fix which leads to worsening the circumstances because then you're not happy if you're gaining weight, etc., or not looking good.
So recognize where you're at. There are ways to overcome
By
it.
the way,
yoga, meditation. We've mentioned a couple different apps to use. There's all sorts of things.
By the way, we never talked about, maybe briefly for a second, vanity in the immune system.
Oh, I'm curious.
Is that part 2?
Do tell.
Well, think about it. What would you guys think? If you...
When you feel good, or when you look good, you feel good,
Yes,
right?
right. Is that vanity to say, I look good?
Yep.
Is that being vain to say
I
you
don't
look
know.
good?
I mean, is it
Or is
confidence?
that being confident and just accepting that you're happy with yourself?
Yeah, I think there.
I think feeling that you look good is good for you because you feel happy with yourself.
Loving yourself.
Now, wanting to look better than your friend, wanting to be the prettiest person in the room, wanting to suck all the attention out of everyone
Making it a
through
competition.
your looks,
Yeah.
then that's vanity, and that's bad because then it takes you actually to a moment of stress, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're stressing out. You have to be
Comparing.
the center of attention, and you have to be the prettiest person around. So now you're having the opposite effect on your system.
And you brought this up, Nikki. Maybe it was before the show. I can't remember now if we had it on here or not. But you were talking about when you work out, looking in the mirror and seeing yourself. And so I think people work out to improve their health and lose weight and build this body. But they also might do it for the fact that I look good for others to see, right? And if you look in the mirror and think that, then maybe that's your high and maybe that's your reason to keep working out. And that's a good...
Well, and that's one good thing I think people should do in the morning. We all look in the mirror, or most of us go to the mirror to wash up and brush our teeth and do the daily makeup, whatever we're doing at the sink, and the mirror's right there. You know, I'm sorry, I'm old. I liked Happy Days, the show. Okay, I was there during the original show. I don't have to watch the reruns to remember Fonzie. What did Fonzie do when he got in front of the mirror?
I don't know.
I said, hey.
Is that what he said?
He'd look at the mirror. He'd pull out his comb to comb his hair, and sometimes he would look at himself and go, "Hey," and he'd put the comb back in his pocket.
I love that.
And so
What's wrong with
he
that?
was
That's
happy with
good.
himself. People would call him vain because he, thought he looked good. But the fact is, that's better for the immune system. He wasn't being vain.
Yeah.
He was content with the way he looked,
Right.
and happy with the way he looked. Now and it was a comedy anyway, so it was
Yeah.
supposed to be funny. But Fonzie was the cool dude, and everybody thought he was cool, and he always did the cool things and stood out in the crowd. Had the motorcycle, the leather jacket, and
And ironically, the show was called Happy Days.
Yes, Happy Days.
Right?
Exactly. But my point is, when you look in the mirror, I don't care what you look like. Don't compare yourselves with others. Be happy with what you look like. And if you're not, accept that you can be happy the way you are, but that you want to improve and change if you feel the need.
Yeah.
But only if you feel the need. Don't let others push you into that need, because then it just creates more anxiety. I personally feel, they say heavy people tend to get more disease sooner, and they tend to die younger than people who are thin. Many, many different issues tied to that, and I think part of the reason for that is not because they're fat or overweight, but because society treats them as if they are. And they deal with a lot of anxiety and stress and self-confidence issues because of the way they think other people think they look, rather than, so they accept that those comments are what are damaging.
They
right?
color how you feel about
Right.
yourself.
Is it
Yeah.
true that the systems, when the body has a huge amount of fat on it, are stressed more? Yes, it is. Harder on the knees, harder on the general functions of the organs, but they get added compromise through the image issues of our society.
And I don't know why I was thinking about this, but I was a dancer like in college and everything. And so I was used to looking at myself in a mirror. But a lot of people are not comfortable doing that. And they feel bad. Like they feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so vain. I'm looking at myself. Or if they, like even sometimes my daughter would tell me like, I feel like I am vain if I say that I look good or if I love myself. Whereas you have to love yourself so that you can love other people. And so I think there is, like an emotional health to looking in the mirror and saying, yeah, this is me. I love it. Because so many people can really look and like nitpick themselves and bring themselves down and be negative. So it really is about that confidence at looking in the mirror and accepting like, this is me. I love it. Even if I have imperfections, it's okay.
So tomorrow morning, when you get up, both you and Eric and myself, when we walk to the mirror, we're going to smile at ourselves and we're going to say,
Hey.
it's a new day.
I
And
do.
You do already.
I love it.
You
yeah.
do every day already.
I've gone through it.
You
Yeah.
know, how did I know that? You're just always such
Well, I
a
used to
positive
have the
person.
breast implants, so I used
Yeah.
to hate my body. So
Oh.
I've gone through that whole
Cycle.
transition from hating it to accepting it to loving it. Like, this is awesome.
Good,
I love
good,
it
good.
now. Yeah.
Well,
But
thank
it's a
you for
journey.
sharing that.
It's not
It's
easy.
a journey. I like this here at the end here. I just wanted to share this quote by Norman Cousins. And he was a very positive guy, we can honestly say. He said, and he was referring to, he said this, connected to people who have severe chronic illness like cancer, other things. He said, don't deny the diagnosis, try to defy the verdict. Don't deny the diagnosis, try to defy the verdict.
Oh, so if they tell you you have 6 months to live.
You know, you can be accepting of the negative information, but then what you want to do is work towards a solution.
Yeah.
Or at least the most positive outcome that could occur, right? If you get, for instance, if you're told you only have 3 months to live, you can spend those next 3 months in so many different ways. The evidence and the research would suggest that if you want any chance of overcoming that and living, the most important thing you could do in those next 3 months is live a positively high existence, whatever that is. Avoid all negativity, avoid injury, but do things you enjoy that you find fun and uplifting. And your chances of success are not guaranteed even by doing that, but the results will be an improvement over what would have been had you just wallowed in your pity for the next 3 months until you died. In fact, you might even find you don't even last 3 months if you're just a negative thinker for the next 3 months and wallow in your sorrow because of your circumstances.
Go watch that movie Bucket List. That's a fun one. Right?
Yes.
Bucket list.
That's a great one.
The old guys, and they live out their life and climb Mount Everest and skydive and all those fun things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Go out with a bang.
All right. So this is the third out of 4 parts for inflammation, our series. The first one we talked about nutritional. The next one was physical. Today was emotional. And next week we're going to get into the environmental triggers. For
Environmental triggers, and there's some overlap there with the nutritional side of things because the environment affects the foods, right?
Oh, true.
So,
True.
yeah.
Well, I hope that you all learned something today and enjoyed this. I know I did. Thank you, Dr. Kell and Eric, for being here today. And if you enjoyed this, please do share it with a friend or family member. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts, and we will speak with you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nikki. Thanks, Eric.
While we make every effort to broadcast correct information, we are still learning. We will double check all facts, but realize that medicine is a constantly changing science and art. One doctor may have a different way of doing things from another. We are simply presenting our views on how to live a healthy lifestyle that will be as evidence-based as possible. We welcome any comments, suggestions, or corrections of errors. We take no money from drug or device companies. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or others, including but not limited to patients that you are treating. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast. Under no circumstances shall Dr. Kell Fullerton or any guests or any contributors to the podcast or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Dr. Kell Fullerton be responsible for damages arising from use of this podcast. This blog should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis of expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. Our website, blog, and podcasts are all HIPAA compliant. While you may give your email address to subscribe to the website posts or to post information on the website blog, we will never share your email address or contact information with any third parties without your explicit permission. The contents of Health Talk with Dr. Kell podcast and the show notes are all copyrighted. All blog posts, podcasts, and show notes that are distributed to the public for free can be redistributed via hard copy or electronic copy for free only if Health Talk with Dr. Kell is included as the acknowledged author within the actual media that is being redistributed. The Health Talk with Dr. Kell podcast is a production of the Orange Stack with executive producers Dr. Kell Fullerton and Eric Hammond and hosts Nikki Sterling.